Hello all, and welcome back to the channel. Well, here we are. We're at the end of November, and on Monday we start December. And as you can see from the sweater, it's got a little bit colder here in Monterrey. So as we head into December, and will be the festive period, it's time for posadas and all of the Christmas parties that companies have that they put on for all of their employees. And of course many private events too, and friends getting together for Christmas drinks, meals and everything on Friday night, Saturday night, or even during the week. And of course, one of those things that generally happens at these events is that people kind of imbibe a little bit too much. I'm talking of alcohol. And because of this failing of drivers and people of Nuevo Leon, the transitos, the traffic police, now are starting to put out their roadblocks, their checkpoints, to check everybody who may have been drinking. These are what are known as the anti-alcoholicos. And each district puts out the breathalyzer checks to just catch anybody who may have had that little bit too much and make the roads that little bit safer. I remember being stopped just the once, quite some time ago, at one of these checkpoints in central Monterrey on the Avenue Cuauhtémoc. I'd only had one Bohemia, but I don't know why I kind of felt guilty and thinking, oh, am I going to be stopped? Am I going to be positive or what? Thankfully, I wasn't. And that's one reason why I tend to use either an Uber or a taxi to get to any event that I want to go to. I leave the car at home. Actually, I think the majority of people here in Monterrey, when they do go to their posada or other event, do this kind of thing. They take an Uber or one of the yellow and white taxis that zoom around the city. I always remember, I think it was a couple of years ago, I was meeting up with friends on Gazasada near to the little area with bars near to Tech. And I took a taxi, one of the yellow and white ones, to go home. And as we went down Gazasada, you come to where the road goes under a bridge and then it goes on to Morones Prieto. So the taxi driver decided not to stay in line, went onto the lateral road, down to where there was a petrol station. He turned right. After the petrol station, the next left again, and he came out behind the checkpoint. He then carried on down to Morones Prieto and back home to Guadalupe. Now, I'd like to think that the taxi driver was trying to save me some money by not having to wait with everybody and that he wasn't actually drunk and would have been heavily fined and probably license taken away if he had been checked. I really do think it was the first one. I was looking for the cost of fines for drivers who happen to be under the influence, and also what the alcohol legal limit is here in Nuevo Leon in Mexico. And I couldn't really find that much. Some of the information was a little bit confusing because they work on some kind of scale of how much you earn multiplied by a certain figure and blah, blah, blah. So it was rather not so obvious. But in any case, it seems that here in Nuevo Leon, we have some of the highest fines for drivers and also the lowest legal limit for alcohol consumption. But as I say, I didn't really find all the information that I was looking for. Wasn't that kind of so available, really. Much of the fines across many of the country are based around what's called the UMA, which is Unidad de Medida y Actualización, which is an economic reference point based on the minimum salary, which is like 105 pesos. But it looks like this reference point is for everybody. It's not based on your wage, how much you earn. It's just this blanket measurement. It's rather unfair between the rich and the poor. If you happen to be poor, it's a hell of a fine. If you happen to be a CEO of a company, then it's pocket change. It should be a kind of European way based around what your actual earnings are, like they do in, I think, Sweden and other Scandinavian countries. So if we take just a couple of places of how much they charge for your level of sobriety, we'll look at Guanajuato, Chihuahua, Guadalajara, and, of course, the capital, Mexico City. So in Guanajuato, they use the UMAs, but they multiply between 100 and 120, which means that your level of sobriety can be charged between 10,857 pesos and 21,714 pesos. In Guadalajara, they use a factor of between 150 and 200 UMAs. So your fines can be somewhere between 16,285 pesos and 21,714 pesos. In Chihuahua, the fines are between 4,901 pesos and 11,314 pesos. So it's not quite as expensive there. But what surprised me was that in Mexico City, they only use 60 UMAs, which means that if you do happen to be drunk in charge of your vehicle, then it's only 6,225 pesos. That seems rather low, doesn't it? Here in the municipal district of Monterrey, Monterrey, Guadalupe, San Pedro, San Nicolas, Apodaca, Escobedo, and Santa Catarina, the alcohol limit is 50 milligrams of alcohol per 100 milliliters of blood, which is actually lower than in Britain, which is 80 milligrams. Although in Scotland they did just recently introduced a limit of 50 milligrams, so pretty low. Anyway, should you decide to have a night out here in the municipal area and you decide to have a drink or two, then that's really all that you can do. Have 2 beers. Small ones, that is, like a light beer. Drink that little bit more and you'll get a rather rude awakening at the checkpoints. Well, financially you certainly will, in the way of a rather large fine. I've mentioned the fines in a couple of other places of Mexico, but what are the fines like here in the municipal area? Let's start with where I live, Guadalupe. Here, if you happen to be just over the limit, what they call here ebrio incompleto, not totally drunk, then the fine is 11,314 pesos. Should you be ebrio completo, meaning over the limit, then that fine is 14,142 pesos. But should you repeat this offence, then the fine can go up to as much as 25,456 pesos and 50 cents. And if and when you are over the limit, you could pay a visit to one of their many respected cells, and spend up to 36 hours in custody, where you may also need to give a blood test. By the way, if you refuse to give a blood test or even take the breathalyzer test, then you will also receive a fine of 11,314 pesos. Elsewhere in the municipal area, here are a few fines which vary from whether you are both incomplete and completely over the limit. In San Pedro, the charge can be anything from between 10,857 pesos to 36,970. If you're drunk in Santa Catarina, then those fines will range between 15,000 and 28,000 pesos, with the possibility as well of doing community service. If you don't accept this, then your fine can go up to 50,000 pesos. But should you want a more economic place to go to drink and drive, then there's Escobedo, where the fines are between 4,811 pesos to 9,622 pesos. Why so low? Even lower than Mexico City. But should you be a drunk driver in Monterrey itself, then those fines are going to be between 21,714 pesos and 65,714 pesos. And virtually everywhere, especially Monterrey, if you decide I'm going to try and evade one of these checkpoints, rather like that taxi driver did, then over the festive period, evading will cost you 21,714 pesos. So, it's rather expensive to take your car and drink, really. As well as the fines, if you happen to be a first-time drink driving offender, then you will have your license suspended for 3 months. Do it a second time, and they will suspend it for a year. But if you're third time lucky or unlucky, then it's a case of bye-bye license, and by the way, here's a 64,000 peso fine as well. Also, after your third offence, then every state in the country is sent your details from here in Nuevo León, and that means there's no way you can get another license. So it means you can't quickly nip over the border to Coahuila or Tamaulipas to try and get a new license. Only by giving a false name can you do that. So really the advice is just don't drink and drive. And there are many campaigns here in the state. I don't watch the local TV, so I don't see some of those, if there are any campaigns on TV. But there are plenty of posters and other things in bars which are promoted by the local brewery, Heineken. But the thing is, don't do it. Don't risk it. Take an Uber or a taxi and just hope that your Uber or taxi driver has not been drinking either. But if you do miss beer that much, there are many 0% alcohol offerings that you can get. Even you can get, I think, 0% gin to make a nice mocktail if you want one so much. And I've tried a couple of the non-alcoholic beers like Tecate. They're so-so. But Modelo now make their complete range of beers with not a single drop of alcohol. And I'll be reviewing these Modelo offerings on my beer channel. But really, don't risk it. Have something soft. Have some Topo Chico. Maybe have a Coca-Cola. So, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and click on those buttons down below. Drive carefully, and bye for now.